feel that the mechanisms for exchanging some of these lessons that are being learned individually, do the mechanisms exist to exchange that sort of information between research infrastructures within the community?
It does exist within the same community, not within, I would say, between different communities. Of course, like it's much more. Time is very little for everyone, and you try to, you tend to exchange with who you have to, well, who you're sitting close to you rather than who's far from you. But I think like there is, yeah, quite a lot to learn from other research infrastructure, also from other disciplines. Why not? I remember like attending a couple of ESFRI workshops, and I came home, I was very excited because like I realized how closer than I expected other disciplines and research infrastructures are than I expected from us, because we're very little represented, let's say, in the infrastructure landscape. So I thought, oh my God, it's going to be difficult to interact. But no, it was actually very inspiring as well. So sure, like in short, like I would say that mechanisms to exchange and to help the exchange is all welcome. Yeah.
Does anyone have any success stories? I think we've had a bit already from Keith about what EPOS is doing. Any other success stories in terms of exchanging information in preparing for EOSC? No, well, I'm conscious of time and that we will be returning back to the main breakout session in just a few minutes. So I'll just take a few minutes with you, if that's all right, to wrap up some of our points. And I'm very grateful to Pilar for having taken some notes for us during this session, and apologies again for crashing out partway through. So some of the things I'd like to feed back, and feel free to raise your hand to correct me if I've missed anything, is that some of the things which are missing are that the community need clarity on EOSC, and in particular on what assets are going to be available. So services, datasets and downloads, what exactly will the EOSC offer? Something which isn't clear from the consultation document released on the SRIA so far is exactly what is expected from research infrastructures, and it would be good to know what that could be. A possible area of action to feed into the SRIA is the role that EOSC needs to take in talking to IT experts at research infrastructures as a key factor to underpin the interoperability of the EOSC, recognizing the expertise that is held already within the research infrastructures. And building on all of that, that we need to further develop the vision, a shared vision between EOSC and the research infrastructures. We then moved on to talking a little bit about some of the general awareness that we have within this discussion group of the SRIA, and then more generally into the kind of preparations that you're making individually in terms of preparing for the EOSC. So there seem to be a few examples of research infrastructures trying to standardize protocols relating to data and sequencing, to standardize policy, data management plans. It sounds like there's quite a lot of sharing going on across the sector, but perhaps the mechanisms aren't clear for exchange of information across disciplines, and that a possible area for the SRIA to expand on are areas to expand on the harmonization of policies and the embedding of EOSC services in legislation. Does that broadly capture some of the things that we've talked about? Any other comments?
Well done, Douglas. Sorry, well done, Victoria.
Oh gosh, it's my name. Sorry, my name's
very difficult to do it. So thanks for the summary.
No problem. Thanks for pointing out my name has reverted to the. Yes, there we go. No problem. Does anyone have any questions that they'd like to take back, or anything any further workshops or activities that you could see that ESFRI could support? What's ESFRI's role in adopting and promoting the Sharia?
Victoria?
Yes,
sorry.
Yanis, hi.
Okay, I raise my hand. Okay, now I
Oh,
can
apologies. Sorry, please go ahead.
One of the things, I'll answer the previous question a little bit. Although the priorities are fine in the actions, but my personal feeling is that there is no vision for the future. And that is something that I miss from what has been laid out. And I think that EOSC and all the relevant stakeholders and leaders and so on and so forth should pay attention to this, so that we know we don't just look at the present, because if we look at the future, maybe we might want to change a little bit and at the national level, there are efforts, like at the Italian level, I'm aware, that it looks both at the present and the future and give the vision from their perspective. And I think this should be done not only at other member states, but also at the European level. The vision for EOSC should be part of the whole discussion. And if we articulate that, then maybe some of the priorities may change or be increased or reduced.
Yeah.
So that's something I want to put out with
helpful.
respect to your previous question. Yeah. And with respect to what is the role of ESFRI, well, ESFRI is many things, and with respect to that, ESFRI, think of it as a collective experience and knowledge of how on the governance of research infrastructure, the maturity, implementation, and so on. Not the details of each one, but the technology behind each one. And now, having led policies and funding for all of them, EOSC comes in a way to harmonize or take the responsibility of the generic stuff out of the research infrastructures and the policies around them. I mean, there is a technology. The next session, sharing the next session, is about the technologies, but with respect to the policies, the governance, and the interactions that should be in place between the research infrastructures and EOSC have to be delineated in a way that is everyone is on board, everyone is a supporter, and everyone does what they're best to do. And ESFRI can play an important role in coordinating, catalyzing all that. That's my feeling.
I think that's a really valuable note to end on, Yanis, and I hope that we can all see ESFRI having a role in, as you say, coordinating some of the activities that we've discussed as research infrastructures very positively prepare for the EOSC, and as we've come to expect from ESFRI to lead in this area. And I'm just seeing messages saying that I think we may have an extension of time. Excuse me a moment. Are we ready to close all rooms? Aha. Yes. Well, apologies. So yes, so we're now actually at the second ESFRI EOS workshop, following on from the first in London in January last year. And I guess it'd be very interesting to know whether people are finding these types of events useful, and whether there is value in ESFRI supporting such events after the launch of EOSC and the association into next year. Could I ask for a show of hands for those who would be interested in ESFRI and EOSC events in probably mid 2020? Yes, yes. I see a few hands going up. Thank you. Oh, and even a thumbs up. Lovely. So I have a message here to say we'll stay here, and we will be moved automatically to the other room shortly. I think the plan will be for all of the presentations from from today and for tomorrow to be uploaded on the online event site. But what will also be available on the online event site on the ESFRI website will be the questionnaire, where the same questions that we've talked about today and that will be discussed in the other breakout sessions will be available. So if you or your colleagues would like to submit any written responses, the intention is for those for the online questionnaire to be available. I think it's a Google tool to be available until the end of this week. So if you feel that there's anything that hasn't been covered so far in our session, please feel free to go online, probably the end of today, to add any further comments.
Victoria, thank
Yes.
you. We have to be moved. Thank you, all of you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Victoria. Thanks to Pilar for the notes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Victoria.
Thanks all. I feel I'm on the Starship Enterprise waiting to be transported to another place.
But your name's not Scotty.
By the power of Zoom, this is all possible, isn't it?
Well, on a good day when the network holds up, yes.
I know. Oh gosh. Aha. Leave breakout room.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the plenary session. I have a question to Tassos. Is everybody back yet?
Not yet, Miriam. I'm Yanis from Athena.
Ah, okay, Yanis, I will
Yes.
wait. You just give me,
Yes.
you tell me when you're ready, right?
Yes, of course.
Great.
Miriam, we are all back now. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. So welcome back to the plenary session. I hope you all had very nice and fruitful discussions during the breakouts. I myself was in the Iron Lady breakout, which was very interesting. And I would like to ask all the moderators now, or the reporters of the different sessions, to put on their cameras. Everybody has 2 minutes to report on the breakout session. So these are Inma and Fulvio, Sarah, Victoria, Jessica, and Bob. And I would like to start with the Eos Partnership breakout. So the first breakout was moderated by Inma. So please go ahead.
Okay, can you hear my slide?
Yeah. Perfect.
So just summarizing the conclusion of the breakout session, we have two questions. How the research infrastructure assess the tripartite partnership? Is it adequate to face the challenges? Are research infrastructure users and users communities well represented in future EOS governance? If not, what can be improved? And a second question that was, what are the benefits for thematic research infrastructure organization joining the EOS association? We have had the discussion, and we have 4 main conclusions. There is a clear interest of the research infrastructure to join the association, but it is also recognized that there are certain lack of information. For instance, in some cases, the possibility to join as observer was not considered because it was not known. So it is important to improve this communication in order to have all the information needed. A second conclusion is something that has been raised for the research infrastructure, the financial difficulties. Even it looks like it's not a big fee, what we are considering for joining the association. It brings a lot of difficulty for some of them, especially for those distributed experimental facilities that are not data intensive infrastructures. So we had been discussing about the possible solutions that could be find a way through joining through the clusters, thematic clusters. For that, we recognize that there is a problem that is the requirement to have legal status. And in this sense, the possibility of light association or legal form for those clusters being represented in the association could be a solution. And the other possibility for those research infrastructures is try to go through the institution that are hosting the nodes of the research infrastructures, distributed research infrastructures, in order to have access to the association. A third conclusion, it is about the benefit. It is recognized EOS as a catalyzer to cross-domain collaboration and access. And also it's considered like it's a wonderful tool to develop and for the development and diffusion of standards. It is EOS will bring economy of scale and bring efficiency to those requirements of the research infrastructure in terms of data, open science, and all these requirements of services and resources. And the final conclusion is that it is needed, the different research infrastructure has bring to our attention that they have difficulties for bringing the possibility to make a decision in the Council and General Assembly regarding joining the association. So in this sense, I think that we need to raise awareness of member states and associate countries to facilitate this taking of decisions in the context of the governance bodies. And this is the conclusion of our breakout session.
Okay, thank you very much, Inma. Then I would like to give the floor to Fulvio, who had the second breakout on the partnership and legal entity status.
Yes, okay, hello. So very briefly, we managed to put all the questions into Mentimeter, and we actually split the first one into 3 parts. The one is how to assess the partnership, and the majority of the votes were not too many in the room. I think it were order of 12, if I'm not mistaken. The majority of the votes was for it is partly adequate to face the challenge. And also largest majority of the votes to the next subpoint, are research infrastructure and user communities well represented in future as governance? Majority also said partly. Actually, there was no yes answer to this. So and then we opened up the floor for comments and what can be improved to enhance the representativeness of the research infrastructure and user communities. And we had quite many comments saying that okay, EOS is supposed to deal with open science, so it should not only be for research infrastructure, but other entities, user communities, universities should have their voice. So large research infrastructure, small research infrastructure, there should be a forum tables of discussions to ensure that it is as inclusive as possible. There were a couple of other comments on funding. And this stems from the fact that the research infrastructure are largely already today supporting concretely in terms of effort and in terms of budget. They are supporting data gathering, preparation, curation, and they will love to see some contribution from the Commission and the member states. And because for some research infrastructure, especially for the smaller ones, the participation to EOS could be perceived, allow me the term, as a net loss, at least initially. Of course, it will pay off in the future, but I mean, smaller research infrastructure may have some difficulties with being part of the association. I think this is all for the first part, and then we move to the other part. Yeah, no, there was also an interesting comment on, yeah, pretty much in line with the others about establishing a working group, a task force, or something to improve the collaboration and relation, to establish relation with user communities. Then we move to the other part. Is your research infrastructure joining the EOSC association? None already joined. We have 2 shades of gray, will do in the future and thinking of it, whereas in other cases the thing was not yet discussed. The perceived benefits of being part of the association would be visibility and multidisciplinarity and cross-disciplinarity. However, this has to be seen how in practice it materializes. It's only an educated guess at the moment. And there was also a specific comment from the HPC sector, which is somehow different from other thematic research infrastructure, because they are responsible for I would say a tool essentially, which is can be benefit a lot from being part of EOSC, because it could reach far more users than it used to. And then also we expanded a little bit, and I'm closing shortly, in asking people what added benefits you would like to see that are not yet visible. And there was, as I say, this comment on the HPC, and there was also another one related to AAI, a generic comment on AAI should be fundamental, because it, in addition to being useful in creating the dynamic communities, and it is also lowering the threshold for the smaller entities who would find a lot of the job of defining groups, assigning roles to people. They will find this job already done, so they could directly take it and use it.
Okay, thank you very much, Fulvio. Thank you. Then I would like to hand over to Sarah, who had the 3rd breakout.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, perfect. So we were looking at the SRIA, and there were 3 questions we addressed. How do you assess the current priorities? Are research infrastructures and user communities and their activities well represented in the various action areas? And are there any missing activities? And we had a really useful discussion. One of the key things that came out, I'll just go to our kind of summary slide, was the need to address research needs. So there was a concern that maybe the tree is not always focusing on the research priorities. So, you know, research communities are not that interested in being policed, or, you know, elements like the metrics. They really want to get the research done, to share the data, to enable the analysis. And there wasn't always a, you know, conviction that, you know, there's a proper sense of convenience in EOSC. We talk about usability, we talk about things being, you know, seamless and easy, but it's actually, you know, that isn't really bearing into reality quite yet. So we need to make sure that there's a clear added value for research infrastructures and that it fits their current practices and ways of working. We also had a really useful discussion about the association and a concern that you have to be in the association to have a voice. And one of the reflections that came out in the last group about, you know, some smaller research infrastructures may not have the, you know, the resources to invest came out in ours too. And I think one thing we're really at risk of overlooking here is that the association is one way of engaging in EOSC, but we really need a very strong stakeholder forum outside of that. And we need to ensure that in that stakeholder forum, we've got very broad user inclusion. I know it's sometimes difficult to engage research groups, so maybe we need to work through the mediators, the software engineers or data stewards or the different professional bodies for the research communities. But I think many of those groups may not be a member of the association, and that association may end up being very service heavy or very much the big players, and we can't allow that to skew the directions of EOSC. So I think we do need a very strong kind of research body, and I would also like to see that reflected in the governance personally. We then also talked about very different levels of readiness. So research communities are at different stages. We can't only focus on, you know, the most advanced groups. We've got to make sure we're supporting all. And related to this, we thought about the balance of investments, and maybe we need to redirect some of that funding to where the rubber's actually hitting the road. So supporting communities to develop their standards and their tools. It's not really just about that overarching infrastructure. We need to think about how people are doing data management in practice. And for a lot of research communities, you know, it's people giving up personal time. It's a lot of volunteer effort to develop those standards and those tools. So we need to really invest in those areas. In terms of the missing activities, the main ones that came out were supporting code and workflows. But I think the priority that came out of our group was really the research community emphasis in the activities and in the engagement and in the way we kind of define the priorities.
Okay, thank you very much, Sarah. Victoria, you're next, also on the SRIA.
Thanks, Miriam. I hope I'm sharing my screen now.
Yeah, it's starting up. Yes.
Excellent. So we had some really interesting conversations within our group also on the SRIA, touching on the same point that Sarah, that we've got some various levels of readiness within the participants of our discussion group, but also different levels of awareness of the SRIA so far. So we had some of our members who'd very actively contributed to the consultation, for example, and others for whom they hadn't even had a chance to see the consultation yet. And obviously the full SRIA isn't published. So all were appreciative, I think, of mechanisms such as this to understand the SRIA. Some of the points that were made were the overall vision, so the vision for the future, and a shared vision to be developed between EOSC and the research infrastructures was raised within the group, and the impact that this might have on the priorities if there are any changes in that vision. Some of the things that were missing is a clarity still on the assets that will be available through the EOSC, and to understand in particular what exactly is expected from the RIs at this point in time and going forwards. I should say that we discussed some of the preparations that are being made across the different organisations who were represented in our group, and there are significant preparations being made to the EOSC, which already underpin some of the action areas that are described within the SRIA. So work is already ongoing in these areas, particularly across the standardisation of protocols, data management plans, certification, and sequencing, but also reassuringly that experience is being shared across the community as well, particularly across consortia. Less so, I think, we felt across different disciplines, though I think there was some feeling that that would be valuable. One of the points that was raised is a real need to take advantage of the existing IT expertise in research infrastructures to underpin the interoperability of the EOSC. We also discussed the need for mechanisms for continued exchange of experience across RI communities as the SRIA and as the EOSC becomes a reality. And we looked at what ESFRI's role might be, both in terms of the SRIA and moving into next year, but also at a higher level. So recognizing the collective experience and knowledge that ESFRI has in the region of governance and maturity and implementation, and having policies in place that the ESFRI has a role to coordinate and catalyze some of the alignment of policies and practices across the community in this area. And just to finish off, there was recognition, I think, that that some of the national levels are already looking at the present and the future, but really looking to the future. What's the future of EOSC needs to be done at all levels, including at the European level and at the organizational level. I hope
Thank you very much, Victoria.
Accurately represents our group. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Jessica, I would like to give the floor to you.
Yes, thank you. Okay. Now trying to share my screen. So can you see it now?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, great. So we had the same discussion also on the SRIA, and we had similar outcomes as the other two groups. So they are looking for a bottom-up approach, better involvement of the individual research infrastructures, but via the EOS Association, but also on other channels. And the feedback that we got in the group was that many organizations represented are already preparing to join the association or very eager and very interested to join. So they are very interested to know more about it, to get more information, not just to join the association, but also how to integrate their data into EOS. So this was something that they're very eager to not just give input, but also receive input. And yes, one thing that was more of a question that came up that was not really answered, but maybe food for thought, is how to meet the individual needs and federate on an international level, but also how to involve individual researchers more into EOSC. So that was one kind of open question. Then missing activities, we can agree with Sarah's group. So the focus, or it seems like the focus was very strong on data, but other outputs such as software, code, workflows could also benefit very much from EOSC, and there was definitely interest to have that more represented in future versions of the SRIA. And one other comment or one other point of discussion was the engagement dialogue. So there was the expressed wish that perhaps in this forum, but also in other ways, the dialogue between EOSC and ESFRI and research infrastructures should be kept up because it was thought to be very useful and a very good experience to learn from and get good insights and have exchange from EOS to ESFRIs, but also from ESFRIs to EOSC as a two-way approach to progress and develop EOS together. Yes, and then also the understanding that SRIA is a living document and that there's going to be continuous development, and also eagerness to get involved in this as well. So this hopefully represents our discussion.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Jessica. Then we come to Bob with the Iron Lady as last report from this breakout session.
Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes.
All right, so yeah, this is on the Iron Lady. We started with a brief presentation by the two companies who are performing the EOS core operational costs study. So there's Angel and Luca, and then we went through and discussed some of the questions. The major points coming out, and this comes back to the plenary, is that it should be highlighted that the EOSC Association membership fees do not cover the cost of operating EOSC. Those fees only cover the cost of maintaining the association. Okay. Then looking more at the costs, it's highlighted that the costing studies going on is focused on operation, not development. Right? How would we operate EOSC in the long term? And there's questions about the transition from the current state that we have today towards the first implementation of the MBE. And of course, this implies as well moving away from project funding. Questions were asked about what happens in terms of access to the stuff, and it was highlighted that open remains open. That's to say, if research infrastructures already are making their assets openly available without authorization and authentication, that would still be the case in EOSC. Okay. And around the question of metadata, which is seen as being a very important subject, that it's understood that we need some consensus on an interoperable metadata framework between the different research infrastructures and the communities they support. And at the moment, there isn't something we can point to and say that is the agreed set of interoperable metadata standards we're going to use. Okay. Federating was also a point about using the EOS interoperability framework, which is based on the European interoperability framework, and that has to be the way for federating with the national and thematic infrastructures. And also as a plea at the end to make sure that universities are engaged in EOSC due to their active research performing activities, and they don't feature very much in much of the discussion that's been held today. Okay, I'll stop there. We can't hear you, Miriam.
I always forget that. Sorry. Thank you all very much for your very comprehensive report. And it would be great if you could send your slides then to the stress-free team so that we can use them to write up the report of the workshop. And that would be great to have that. Then we are quite late, but still it's so we will reconvene at 2 o'clock with the next session on the updates of the latest technical developments that is chaired by Yanis. And until then, I wish you a nice break and see you later again.
And just to say that we'll be back in the webinar for session 2. So don't come back here, go back to the webinar.
Yeah. Thank you, Victoria. Thank you. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Tassos, would you like for the stress-free team to meet either back in the webinar panel area or to stay here?
Sorry, Victoria, can you say again?
Would you like to have a quick catch up with the stress-free team, either here or back in the panel session?
Yeah.
We still have a few participants here.
Yeah. Let's. We're closing this and
okay.
Let's go to
back to the panel.
Yes.
Panel. Okay. See you there.
Yeah.